Everyone out here knows you're arresting feds. It's a big show for the media.
It's true. We do think that.
So this Patriot Front, they arrested these guys, 31 of them inside a U-Haul. Okay, now if you look, let me pull this picture up, and there's a bunch of pictures around. You can see them. Okay, so this is, they've been arrested. Now, what about that photograph tells you that this is fake, that these are cops arresting feds? Yeah, it's part of the narrative, absolutely. By the way, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe. Everyone, please like the video. What about this arrest tells you that it's fake? I'll tell you what I think it is. They're leftists, their pants, no. I'll tell you what, they still have their masks on that are complete neck gaiters that cover their entire face. They handcuffed them. Exactly. They've handcuffed them. They've left their masks on. They've left their sunglasses on. And if you look at other pictures, they even still have their backpacks on. And in fact, the picture that I used in the thumbnail, you can see in the thumbnail, they still have their backpacks on. If you are arresting, I don't know, hey, I'm not a police officer, but it seems to make sense to me. If you're arresting these white nationalists, white supremacists, dangerous people that are hiding in this U-Haul, when you arrest them, you got to take off their neck gaiters that cover up their entire face, just their eyes, and they have sunglasses on. They even left the sunglasses on, and you take off their backpacks, because who knows what they have in those backpacks. So that whole thing right there, that's why I used as the thumbnail the picture that I did, so you could see that they have backpacks on. I mean, I've never seen an arrest of people where they let them keep their gear. Have you? Because you don't know what they got in their gear. Now, then a couple of them, okay, like this guy, they cuff him, right? They cuff him, and look what he's got. They finally took off his mask. This is long after the knee thing. He's got a military haircut, government haircut. That's right, Mike Stevens. First thing they do, take the backpacks off. You don't know what they got in those backpacks. They could have weapons, they could have guns, they could have knives. And right there, that tells you. But they've got a narrative, and the narrative is that white nationalists, white supremacists are on the rise. That's it. I mean, that's all the evidence you need that this is completely staged.
And as many people noted, including me, how long would you let these people keep their masks on after they were handcuffed and on their knees? Wouldn't that be one of the very first things you would do, is take off their masks? Or were they protecting them? Maybe they were protecting their identity. But did the police do that? It was a public place. Like, what would... Somebody said COVID. That's funny. That's funny. Oh, imagine that. Imagine if the police forced them to take their masks off, and then their defense was, we had masks for COVID, and they made us take them off. I wonder, So I don't rule out that there might have been some actual reason why the masks were left on. Just some weird reason that isn't obvious. There might be. And it could be that they took them off like immediately after taking the picture, which actually would make sense, right? If you knew that people were going to take pictures, you might say, leave the masks on so they can see what we saw. Like keep the evidence intact, basically, let people take a picture. And then it would keep these guys' identities secret until they had been charged of an actual crime. Because remember, I don't know that they had been individually charged of any crimes, right? So maybe they're not guilty of anything, except, poor poor decision making, depending on your point of view. So, what is the crime of getting in a U-Haul dressed poorly? Is it a crime to plan to a protest? And here's the other question I ask. And by the way, all of you are prompting me because you're having the same thoughts. They do look like they're undercover feds. But let me be the lone voice of semi-reason here. Just because they look exactly like undercover law enforcement, does that necessarily mean that they are? Can you take that next leap? If you're asking me, do they look like it? Yeah. It looks exactly like a bunch of FBI people, and it looks like there are no organic members. It looks like they're all informants. It might be the only organization that accidentally was staffed entirely by informants, and there's no native person actually in the organization anymore. Now, do I think that that's the case? No. But if you ask me if it looks like it, yes. Yes, it looks like it. But be aware that that doesn't mean it is. Now, the notion that they were going to be protesting an LGBTQ event, does that even make sense? Can you connect the dots for me? Why would the Patriot Front even care about an LGBTQ event? When was the last time? I mean, if it's a generic event, right? It's just a generic, pride kind of an event. If it was some kind of a, drag queen in our school kind of a thing, then everybody comes out. But if it's just a local pride parade, is there some far right white supremacist group that cares enough to go protest that? Why would he even bother? Well, what would even be the point? So none of it really makes sense, does it? Everything from the way they do it, to the way they look, to what is alleged that they were up to, absolutely none of it makes sense. Now, people are saying in the comments that they would be activated by the grooming issue. In other words, that might be an incentive for them to be there. And I'll say, okay, but did they expand their, did the Patriot Front always care about grooming? I mean, beyond the way that everybody cares? Was that always an activating part of their organization? Because I kind of doubt it. It's a new issue. Interesting. So let's take a vote on here. Do you think it's a fake, completely staged event? So let's say staged or natural. Now, if it's natural, we have lots of questions. But that doesn't mean there are no answers. So I'm not going to say that it's definitively staged. I'll say it is definitively having lots of signals of being staged. We're very different from knowing it was staged. Very different. So just be alerted that you could be wrong on this one. Okay, so most of you seem to think it was staged. Well, we do live in a world in which assuming the worst is a pretty good assumption. So there's that.
So, Patriot Front. I mean, the name. I just say the name and I just start laughing, right? Not at the alleged political principles that this group embodies, right? Patriot Front is supposed to be like a group of guys in the United States who are all in favor of a return to traditional values, Trump, MAGA, all this kind of stuff, right? And the thing is, see, it glows, man. It glows neon green, CIA neon green. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's so obviously a group set up by American law enforcement, either FBI or somebody else, right? It's so obvious. And its purpose is, well, I'll get to the purpose in just a minute, but the thing is, the reason I'm bringing it up is that, see, a bunch of them were arrested in Idaho They were getting ready to do a counter demonstration to a pride parade. A pride parade is, as you may know, it's where a bunch of sexual minorities parade around in burlesque outfits, basically, or worse than burlesque outfits. I mean, real stuff that, I'd feel very, very embarrassed to see either my child or my grandmother watching. I mean, it's just, anyway. The point, it's part of the decadence, and the slow decay, the slow collapse of the empire, right? And so these Patriot Front guys were all there, and they arrested a whole bunch of them. And there's like this video and pictures of them all on their knees with zip ties, their hands tied behind their back with zip ties. But here's the thing: see, all of them, and I mean every single one of them. They were wearing like this uniform that they have, a t-shirt and khaki pants, fine. Some of them had a long sleeve t-shirt underneath, and some just had the one t-shirt, but all the t-shirts were blue, and the pants were all khakis, and they're kneeling there, but they've been arrested, or at least detained, and every single one of them has a baseball cap on. Every single one of them has like a thing covering their face. And a whole bunch of them have sunglasses, making it impossible to identify them from pictures. They're feds, man. I mean, come on. They're feds. See, because when you get arrested, by the police in any country in the world, okay, not just the United States, whatever covering you have over your face, mask or whatever, they remove it so that they can see who you are, okay? They're not going to tie up your hands behind your back with zip ties and have you there kneeling, waiting before they come and pick you up in the paddy wagon and take you to be processed. They're not going to do that and let you have your face covered. No way. The only reason that they would remain with their faces covered is because they don't want anybody to be able to identify them from pictures. These guys are all feds, or they're federal informants. And I would guess that a few of them are people who genuinely believe this stuff and glommed on to Patriot Front. And now they're mixed up and they're in all kinds of trouble because the federal law enforcement officers in this group, they're obviously not going to get charged with anything. And the federal informants, they're not going to get charged with anything. On the contrary, they're going to keep on getting their $2,000 or $3,000 a month for being informants, steady as she goes kind of thing, right? It's the poor suckers who genuinely believe that this Patriot Front group was doing good. They're the ones who are going to wind up going to jail and or paying all kinds of fines. I mean, it's really despicable. Law enforcement set up this group. It's obvious from the get-go. They were too organized. I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing that you realize, no, it's not real. Because they're too organized. They're way too organized. The clothing, the whole thing. It's just, it just reeks of Fed. Just screams Fed.
Everyone out here knows you're arresting feds. It's a big show for the media.
It's true. We do think that.